It had been 6 months since the divorce. 6 months since I signed those papers and walked away from Dante Moretti, telling myself I'd never look back. 6 months since I made the hardest choice of my life, choosing to disappear, to protect the secret growing inside me, to let him believe the lie that would set me free, but slowly kill me from the inside. The lie that I'd gotten rid of our baby. I was walking down Maple Street that afternoon, moving slowly with one hand resting protectively on my swollen belly, feeling our daughter kick against my palm. I was 7 months pregnant now, exhausted and vulnerable, but finally feeling safe in this quiet residential neighborhood. This was the one street in the entire city where Dante never went, the one place where his world of penthouses and boardrooms and dark dealings never touched, which is exactly why I'd let my guard down. That's why I didn't see the black car until it was too late. The sound of the engine made me look up, that distinctive growl of expensive machinery that was far too familiar, far too wrong for this simple street. My heart stopped before my mind could catch up, and then I saw him behind the wheel, his face visible through the windshield, his eyes locking onto mine with an intensity that felt physical. Dante had found me. The shock rippled through both of us like electricity, and I watched as his gaze traveled from my face down to my belly, to the undeniable truth of what I'd been hiding. The car screeched to a halt in the middle of the street, brakes shrieking, and I stood frozen on the sidewalk with every muscle locked and every instinct screaming at me to run, but my feet refused to cooperate. He got out of the car slowly, moving with that controlled precision that had always terrified and fascinated me in equal measure. He was 6'3" of barely contained fury and shock and something darker. Something I recognized from our marriage. Something that made my breath catch in my throat even now. Possession. Pure, undeniable possession. He crossed the street without looking, ignoring the traffic, ignoring everything except me. And when he stopped directly in front of me, standing far too close as he always did, I could barely draw breath. He didn't speak at first, just stared at me with those dark eyes that saw everything, taking in my face, my body, the curve of my stomach that told him everything he needed to know about the lie I'd been living. His jaw clenched hard enough that I could see the muscle jumping, and his hands were fisting at his sides like he was physically restraining himself from reaching for me. When he finally spoke, his voice came out low and rough and absolutely lethal. "Annie, you lied to me." It wasn't a question. It was an accusation, a statement of the truth we both knew, and I felt the weight of it settle over me like a physical thing. I lifted my chin defensively, trying to find some strength in the face of his fury, and forced the words out. I was protecting us. His laugh was bitter and dangerous and completely broken, the sound of a man who'd been gutted and was only now realizing the extent of the wound. Protecting us. You told me you'd terminated the pregnancy, that there was nothing left, that we were done, and there was no going back. His eyes dropped to my stomach again, lingering there with an intensity that made my skin burn. But here you are, 7 months pregnant with my child, living a lie that I believed for half a fucking year. Guilt crashed through me in waves, hot and crushing and entirely deserved. But I held my ground, because I'd made this choice for a reason. I didn't have any other choice, Dante. No choice. He stepped even closer, invading my space and my air and every defense I'd built around myself. You had every choice in the world, Elena, and you chose to erase me completely, to make me believe I'd lost everything that mattered. His hand reached out toward my stomach, hovering there without actually touching, trembling slightly with the effort of restraint, and I could see the war happening behind his eyes. This baby is mine, ours, and you stole 6 months from me. 6 months I can never get back. I felt tears threatening but refused to let them fall, refused to show that kind of weakness when I needed all my strength. You would have trapped me if you'd known, controlled me, used the baby as leverage to keep me locked in your world no matter what I wanted. Something shifted in his expression then, pain flashing across his features so quickly I almost missed it. And I would have protected you, both of you, from everything and everyone. His voice dropped lower, becoming almost gentle. Including from myself, if that's what it took to keep you safe. The admission cracked something inside me, because despite everything, despite all the reasons I'd run, I believed him in that moment. But believing him didn't change the past, didn't undo the very real threats that had driven me away in the first place. Someone threatened me, Dante. Someone in your organization. Someone close enough to know details about our lives. They said if I didn't disappear completely, they would make absolutely certain that neither me nor the baby would survive. His entire body went rigid at my words, every muscle tensing until he looked like he was carved from stone, and his voice when he spoke was colder than I'd ever heard it. Tell me who. It was a command, not a question, and I could hear the death sentence already being written in his tone. I don't know who it was. The message came anonymously, untraceable, but it was detailed and specific and absolutely real. I placed my hand over my stomach protectively, remembering the terror of that moment. So I made a choice to fake the abortion, to disappear completely, to do whatever it took to survive and keep our baby safe. The silence that followed was suffocating, heavy with everything unsaid between us. And then he was moving, pulling out his phone with sharp, precise movements and dialing without asking for permission. Hey Marco, I need everything you can find from 6 months ago. Any threats made against Elena, anything anonymous or suspicious. I don't care how buried it is. Find it and find them now. He ended the call, and his eyes came back to me, burning with an intensity that made my knees weak. You should have told me. Should have trusted me to handle whatever threat was coming instead of making this decision alone. Trust you. You expected me to trust the man who married me as part of a business alliance, who saw me as a possession to be acquired and controlled, who never once in 2 years told me, who loved you more than his own life. His confession stopped me cold, stealing the breath from my lungs and every defense I'd built up. I stared at him, searching his face for any sign of manipulation or lies, but all I saw was raw honesty. You never said that, not once in 2 years of marriage. I showed you every single day through every decision I made and every moment I chose you. He was so close now that I could feel the heat radiating off his body, could sense his fury and his desire and his desperate need all tangled together. But you never saw it. Never let yourself believe that I could be more than what I was born to be. The truth of his words hit me hard because he was right. Painfully, devastatingly right. And I had to force myself to stay focused. I couldn't take that risk. Couldn't gamble our baby's life on hope and the possibility of change. His hand finally made contact, his palm pressing flat against my stomach with a gentleness that contradicted everything about the moment. And the baby kicked hard, responding to her father's touch for the first time. I watched his expression shatter completely, as actual tears formed in his eyes. My baby, our baby, real and alive and here. Then he did something I never expected. Something that stopped my heart completely in my chest. He dropped to his knees right there in the middle of the sidewalk, his hands still on my stomach, and his forehead pressing against the curve where our daughter was growing. His voice when he spoke was completely wrecked, broken in a way I'd never heard before. But I thought I'd lost everything, that my choices and my world and all my failures had cost me the only thing that ever really mattered. His breath was warm against my belly through the thin fabric of my dress. But you're here and she's here, and I swear on everything I am that I'm not letting go, not again, not ever. I was aware of people passing by, of curious stares and whispered conversations, but Dante didn't seem to notice or care about any of it. He stayed there on his knees, holding our daughter through layers of fabric and skin, and all the lies between us, and I felt something inside me begin to crack. Dante, please get up. People are staring. He looked up at me with those tear-filled eyes, his expression fierce and desperate and more vulnerable than I'd ever seen it. Tell me you don't feel this connection between us anymore. Tell me the last 6 months completely erased what we had together. I couldn't say it because it would be a lie, because every night I still dreamed of him, and every day I wondered if I'd made the right choice in running. The truth was written all over my face, and we both knew it. Feeling something doesn't change the reality of your world, Dante. Doesn't eliminate the danger or erase the threats that are still out there. Then I'll change my entire world. Burn it all down to ashes if that's what it takes. He stood up slowly, his hands remaining on my stomach, in a gesture that was both possessive and protective. I'll do whatever I have to do for you and for her. Her? How do you... His smile was slow and sad and heartbreakingly beautiful. I don't know how I know. I just do. Deep in my bones, I know we're having a daughter. His hands spread wider across my belly, his touch becoming more certain. You're coming with me right now, somewhere safe where I can properly protect both of you. I'm not going anywhere with you, Dante. I can't just... Elena. He said my name in that particular way he had, the tone that used to make my knees weak and still did despite everything. Please, just let me protect you this time. Let me be what I should have been from the very beginning. His voice dropped to almost a whisper. Let me be a real father, and a real husband, and a man who's actually worthy of you. The plea in his voice undid every defense I had left, because this version of Dante, broken and honest and completely desperate, was the man I'd fallen in love with before the world got in the way. 1 week? You get exactly 1 week to prove to me that you've changed, that your world is different now, that we could actually be safe. Relief flooded across his face so completely that I could see how terrified he'd been that I would refuse. 1 week. I'll take whatever you'll give me. He was already pulling out his phone again, typing rapidly, making arrangements and securing locations with the efficiency that had always characterized everything he did. Get in my car right now. We're going somewhere they'll never think to look for us. Dante, I need to think about this. Trust me, just this one time. Please trust me enough to let me keep you safe. Against every instinct I'd developed over 6 months of hiding, against every lesson I'd learned about self-preservation, against all the scars I'd earned from loving this man, I made a choice. I took his offered hand and let him guide me to the car. Let him help me into the passenger seat with a gentleness that made my chest ache. Let him drive me away from my carefully constructed hiding place and into complete unknown territory. Because maybe, just maybe, the man I'd divorced 6 months ago wasn't the same man sitting beside me now. Maybe the time apart had taught him lessons that 2 years of marriage never could. Maybe we were being given a genuine second chance for our daughter's sake. For our sake. For everything we could still become together. Or maybe I was walking straight into the very trap I'd spent 6 months carefully escaping from. Either way, there was absolutely no going back now. The reunion had happened. The lie was exposed. The truth was finally out in the open between us. And Dante Moretti, mafia boss and my ex-husband and the father of my unborn child, had just reclaimed what he'd lost, whether I was ready for it or not. Chapter 2. The past that broke us. The safe house Dante takes me to is nothing like I expected. Not one of his usual properties with armed guards and surveillance cameras on every corner, but instead, a small cottage nestled in the mountains about 2 hours outside the city. It's quiet and isolated and almost peaceful, the kind of place that seems impossible for a man like him to own. And as he helps me out of the car with careful hands on my waist, I realize he's been planning this refuge for longer than just today. Inside, the cottage is warm and well-stocked, with a fire already crackling in the stone fireplace, and the kitchen fully supplied as if he'd known we'd end up here eventually. He guides me to the oversized couch and insists I sit down, bringing me water and a blanket despite my protests, his hands gentle but his jaw still clenched with barely controlled emotion. You need to rest. You've been standing too long and the stress isn't good for the baby. His voice carries that tone of command that used to infuriate me. But now I'm too exhausted to fight. So I let him fuss over me while I try to process everything that's happened in the last few hours. He sits across from me in the armchair, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees and his hands clasped together, studying me with an intensity that makes my skin prickle with awareness. The silence stretches between us, heavy with 2 years of marriage and 6 months of separation and all the things we never said to each other when it mattered most. Finally, he breaks the quiet with a question I've been dreading. Tell me about that night, the night you decided to leave. I need to understand what happened. My hands instinctively go to my stomach, seeking comfort in the life growing there, and I take a deep breath before letting myself fall back into the memory I've been trying so hard to forget. And it was 3 weeks after our second anniversary, and you'd been distant for months, pulling away from me in ways I couldn't understand or reach through. I keep my eyes on the fire, finding it easier to talk when I'm not looking directly at him. And you were coming home later and later, always covered in tension you wouldn't explain, having conversations you'd end the moment I walked into the room. I can feel his gaze burning into me, but I push forward, needing to get this out while I still have the courage. No. Then one night, I overheard you talking to Marco in your office, and you were discussing me like I was a problem that needed solving, like my safety was somehow threatening everything you'd built. Elena, that's not what... Let me finish, please. I finally look at him, seeing the pain in his eyes, but knowing we need to get through this. Odds. The next morning, I found a letter slipped under our bedroom door while you were in the shower. No signature, no return address, just a simple message that if I didn't disappear within 48 hours, they would make sure neither me nor any child I might be carrying would survive to see the end of the week. His entire body tenses at my words, muscles coiling like he's preparing to attack something, and his voice when he speaks is deadly quiet. Itwa, you never told me about any letter. Never gave me a chance to protect you from whoever was making those threats. Because I was terrified, Dante, completely paralyzed with fear, because the letter contained details about my daily routine that only someone very close to you could possibly know. I wrapped the blanket tighter around myself, remembering the cold terror of that morning. They knew what time I went to the gym, knew which coffee shop I stopped at every Thursday, knew things that meant they'd been watching me for weeks or maybe months. So you decided to run instead of trusting me to handle it. There's no accusation in his tone now, just a weary kind of understanding mixed with regret. And I decided to survive, and the only way I could see to do that was to give you a reason to let me go willingly. I forced myself to hold his gaze even though it hurts. So I went to the doctor alone and asked what it would take to fake a miscarriage, paid him an obscene amount of money to create false medical records, and then I came home and told you I'd terminated a pregnancy you didn't even know existed. The memory of that conversation still makes me sick, remembering the way his face had gone completely blank when I'd said the words, the way he'd just stood there in frozen silence while I'd packed a bag and walked out of his life. I watched you turn into a statue when I told you. My voice cracks despite my best efforts to stay strong. You didn't fight me, didn't ask me to stay, didn't even seem surprised that I was leaving. And that's when I knew I'd made the right choice because you'd already let me go emotionally long before I left physically. That's not true. That's not even close to the truth of what I was feeling. He stands abruptly and starts pacing, running his hands through his hair in a gesture of frustration I remember too well. And I was drowning in my own failures, trying to figure out how to tell you that someone in my organization had put a target on your back, trying to find a way to protect you without losing you completely. He stops pacing and turns to face me with raw honesty written across every feature. When you told me about the abortion, I thought you'd found out about the threats somehow, and this was your way of cutting all ties, making sure there was nothing binding you to me anymore so you could escape cleanly. So you just let me go, didn't fight for us or for what we could have had. I let you go because I thought it was what you wanted, because I believed you'd be safer away from me than you could ever be at my side. His voice is rough with emotion now, all his usual control stripped away. Every single day for 6 months I've been investigating, hunting down everyone who might have had access to information about you, trying to find who sent that letter and why. And did you find them? Not yet, but I'm close. I can feel it. He moves to the couch and sits beside me, not quite touching but close enough that I can feel his heat. What I did find out was that there'd been a plan to force me to choose between you and the organization. Someone was trying to push me into a corner where I'd have to pick one or the other. A loyalty test. I say it quietly, understanding dawning. Exactly. And by leaving when you did, you removed their leverage without even realizing it. His hand reaches out slowly, telegraphing the movement before his fingers brush against mine. But it also left me in hell, believing I'd failed you so completely that you'd rather terminate our child than stay connected to me in any way. The pain in his voice mirrors my own, and I realize we've both been living in our own versions of torment, both believing we'd lost everything, both carrying guilt and grief that was never entirely ours to bear. And I'm sorry I lied to you about the pregnancy. Sorry I didn't trust you enough to tell you the truth. And I'm sorry I created a world where you felt like lying was your only option for survival. His fingers thread through mine properly now, holding on like I might disappear if he lets go. I'm sorry I made you feel like a possession instead of a partner. Sorry I never found the words to tell you what you meant to me. We sit there in the firelight with our hands clasped together, both of us crying quietly for everything we lost and everything we're trying desperately to rebuild. And for the first time in 6 months, I let myself feel the full weight of what leaving him cost me. Tell me about the pregnancy, about the last 6 months. I want to know everything I missed. His voice is gentle now, coaxing, and I find myself wanting to share it with him despite all my reservations. I found out I was pregnant 2 weeks after I left you, standing in a gas station bathroom somewhere in Nevada, staring at a positive test and feeling like the universe was playing the cruelest joke imaginable. I smile slightly at the memory despite the pain. I'd just convinced you I'd terminated a pregnancy, and now I was actually carrying your baby and had no way to tell you without putting us both at risk. What did you do? I drove until I ran out of road, ended up in a tiny town in Colorado where nobody knew me or cared about my past. I rest my free hand on my stomach, feeling the now familiar flutter of movement. I got a job waitressing at a diner, rented a room above a bookstore, and tried to figure out how to be a mother when I'd never expected to become one. You did all that alone, carried my child and prepared for her arrival without any support or help. I wasn't completely alone. The woman who owns the bookstore took me in like a stray kitten, helped me through the morning sickness and the doctor's appointments and all the fears that come with first-time pregnancy. I look at him, seeing the jealousy and gratitude warring in his expression. But every night I would lie in that small room and wonder if I'd made the right choice, if keeping our daughter safe was worth never having you in her life. His other hand comes up to cup my face, his thumb stroking away the tears I didn't realize were falling. You made the choice you thought would keep her alive. And I can't fault you for that, even though it's been killing me not knowing. I named her already, in my head at least, though I know you'll want to say in the final decision. Tell me. Isabella, after your mother. The look on his face is worth every moment of fear and pain I've endured. Pure joy mixed with grief for the mother he lost too young, and when he speaks, his voice is thick with emotion. She would have loved knowing that, would have loved you for thinking of her. He leans forward slowly, giving me time to pull away, and presses his forehead against mine in a gesture of intimacy that's more powerful than any kiss. I promise you, Elena, I will find whoever threatened you, and I will eliminate that threat permanently. And then I'm going to spend the rest of my life proving to you that you and Isabella are my whole world. That's a big promise from a man who deals in violence and power. Then watch me keep it. And despite everything, despite all the reasons I should guard my heart, I find myself believing him. Chapter 3. The Anger That Hides Desire. I wake up to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and the disorienting sensation of not knowing where I am for several seconds before everything comes rushing back. The cottage. Dante finding me. The confession about the threats and the pregnancy. All of it crashing over me like a wave as I push myself upright on the couch, where I apparently fell asleep during our conversation last night. The blanket that was draped over me slides down, and I realize it's not the one I'd been using earlier, but a heavier, warmer one that smells distinctly like Dante's cologne, which means he must have covered me sometime after I drifted off. I can hear movement in the kitchen, the quiet sounds of someone trying to be silent and failing. And when I stand up and make my way toward the noise, I find Dante at the stove attempting to make breakfast with the focused intensity he applies to everything in his life. He's still wearing yesterday's clothes, though his jacket is gone and his shirt sleeves are rolled up to his elbows, exposing forearms that are more distracting than they have any right to be this early in the morning. His hair is disheveled, like he's been running his hands through it repeatedly, and there are dark circles under his eyes that suggest he didn't sleep at all last night, probably standing guard over me while I was unconscious and vulnerable. "You don't have to cook for me. I'm perfectly capable of making my own breakfast." He turns at the sound of my voice, and something flashes across his face. Something heated and possessive that makes my breath catch before he carefully banks it behind his usual controlled expression. "You're 7 months pregnant and you were exhausted enough to fall asleep mid-conversation last night. So yes, I absolutely do have to make sure you eat properly." There's no room for argument in his tone, that commanding quality that used to make me want to rebel just on principle. But now, I'm too tired and too hungry to fight him over something as simple as eggs and toast. I lower myself carefully into one of the kitchen chairs, my growing belly making even simple movements more complicated than they used to be. And I catch him watching the process with an intensity that makes me hyper-aware of every inch of my body. "Stop staring at me like that." "Like what, exactly?" He plates the food and brings it over to me, setting it down with a gentleness that contradicts the edge in his voice. "And like you're cataloging every change in my body, every difference from how I looked 6 months ago." I pick up my fork to give my hands something to do besides shake. "It's unnerving. You're carrying my child, and I missed 6 months of watching you grow and change. So forgive me if I can't stop looking now that I finally have you in front of me again." He sits down across from me with his own plate, though I notice he's barely touching the food, too busy watching me eat like it's the most fascinating thing he's ever witnessed. Besides, you're beautiful like this, more beautiful than I remember, and I remember everything about you." The compliment hits me harder than it should, making heat rise in my cheeks as I focus determinedly on my breakfast and try to ignore the way my body responds to his words. This is dangerous territory we're sliding into. This awareness that never quite died between us despite everything that went wrong. And I need to keep my head clear if I'm going to survive this week with my heart intact. "Dante, we need to talk about what happens after this week is over. About custody arrangements and how we're going to co-parent when we can barely be in the same room without what? Without wanting each other. Without remembering how good we were together when we weren't busy destroying each other." He leans back in his chair with that predatory grace that's always characterized his movements, studying me with eyes that see far too much. "You can pretend all you want that you don't still feel this thing between us, but your body gives you away every time I get close. That's just residual attraction, muscle memory from 2 years of marriage. It doesn't mean anything. I'm proud of how steady my voice sounds even though my pulse is racing. Is that what you tell yourself at night when you're alone in bed thinking about me?" His voice drops lower, becoming almost intimate despite the space between us. "Because I think about you constantly. Think about the way you used to look at me when you thought I wasn't paying attention. Think about the sounds you made when I touched you in all the right places." "Stop it. This isn't appropriate. We're supposed to be figuring out how to be parents together, not what? Not acknowledging that we still want each other despite everything that's happened." He stands abruptly and moves around the table, not touching me, but getting close enough that I can feel his heat radiating. "I've spent 6 months trying to convince myself I was better off without you, trying to bury myself in work and investigations and anything that would keep me from thinking about how much I missed you, and it was all complete bullshit." I stand too, needing to not feel quite so vulnerable sitting down while he towers over me, and the movement brings us even closer together in the small kitchen space. "So what exactly are you suggesting? that we just pick up where we left off and pretend nothing bad ever happened between us. I'm suggesting that we stop lying to ourselves about what we both want. His hand comes up slowly, giving me plenty of time to move away. And when I don't, his fingers brush against my cheek with a gentleness that makes my knees weak. I'm suggesting that we acknowledge this thing between us isn't going anywhere. And maybe, just maybe, we figure out how to build something real instead of running from it. I can't do this with you again. Can't let myself fall when I know how much it's going to hurt when you inevitably pull away. My voice comes out shakier than I want, betraying how much his proximity is affecting me. Then don't fall alone. Let me fall with you this time. Let me prove that I've learned from my mistakes. His other hand settles on my hip, not pulling me closer, but just resting there like he needs the contact to ground himself. Give me a real chance to show you I'm not the same man who let you walk away. His phone ringing shatters the moment between us, that sharp electronic sound cutting through the tension like a knife, and I watch frustration flash across his face before he steps back and pulls it from his pocket. He glances at the screen and his entire demeanor changes, shifting from the vulnerable man in front of me to the dangerous one I know he can be. This is the call I've been waiting for, the investigator I hired to track down information about the threats. He answers it with a curt greeting, listening intently while his expression grows darker with each passing second. And I can tell from his body language that whatever he's hearing isn't good news. When he finally ends the call, he looks at me with an intensity that sends chills down my spine despite the warm kitchen. They found something. A connection I didn't want to believe was possible. What kind of connection? The threats against you, the letter you received, all of it traces back to someone I've known for 20 years, someone I trusted with my life. His jaw clenches hard enough that I can hear his teeth grinding together. My cousin Mateo was the one who orchestrated everything, trying to force me to choose between you and the organization so he could move into position as my successor if I showed weakness. The name hits me like a physical blow because I remember Mateo. Remember the way he always seemed just a little too friendly, always watching us with calculating eyes that I'd dismissed as simple interest. But he's family. Why would he want to hurt us like that? Because he's ambitious and ruthless, and he saw you as my greatest weakness, something he could exploit to prove I wasn't fit to lead. Dante's hands are clenched into fists at his sides, his whole body radiating barely controlled violence. He gambled that I'd choose the organization over you, that I'd let you walk away to maintain my position, and he almost won that bet. What are you going to do? What I should have done months ago, when I first suspected someone was working against me. His eyes meet mine, and there's something absolutely lethal in his gaze. I'm going to eliminate the threat permanently, make it clear that anyone who comes after what's mine will face consequences they can't survive. Dante, you can't just kill your own cousin. That will start a war within your organization. Then there will be a war, but I'm done playing by rules that allow people to threaten my family. He moves closer again, his hands framing my face with surprising gentleness, given the violence I can see simmering just beneath his surface. You and Isabella are my priority now. Everything else is secondary. And if that means burning down everything I've built to keep you safe, then that's exactly what I'll do. This is exactly what I was afraid of. This all-consuming intensity that destroys everything in its path when you decide you want something. I should pull away, but I can't seem to make myself move. You'll tear your whole world apart and then resent me for it later when you realize what you've lost. You don't understand. You've never understood. His forehead drops to rest against mine, his breath warm against my lips. You and our daughter aren't something I want. You're something I need to survive, and I lost you once because I was too stupid and proud to admit it. His thumbs stroke across my cheekbones with devastating tenderness. I won't make that mistake again. Won't let anyone or anything take you from me, even if it means becoming the monster everyone already thinks I am. I'm scared of what you'll become if you go down this path. Then be scared, but stay anyway. Choose me anyway, despite all your very valid fears. His lips are so close to mine now that I can almost taste him. I know I don't deserve another chance. Know I've given you every reason to run and keep running, but I'm asking anyway because I can't do this without you. The kiss that follows isn't gentle or tentative, but hungry and desperate, and full of 6 months of separation and longing, and all the words we've never been able to say to each other. His hands slide from my face into my hair while mine fist in his shirt. And for several long moments, there's nothing but heat and need, and the undeniable chemistry that's always existed between us no matter how hard we've tried to deny it. When we finally break apart, both breathing hard and slightly shocked by the intensity of what just happened, he rests his forehead against mine again, while we both try to catch our breath. I need to go handle Mateo. Need to make sure this threat is eliminated before it can come anywhere near you again. And then what happens? And then I come back here and we figure out what comes next. Together this time instead of alone. He kisses me once more, softer now, almost gentle. Wait for me. Trust me enough to come back to you. 1 week, you promised me 1 week. And I'm keeping that promise. But first I need to make sure that week will be safe for all of us. He grabs his jacket and his keys, pausing at the door to look back at me one more time. And there are guards outside, people I trust with my life who will protect you while I'm gone. Don't leave this cottage for any reason until I return. Then he's gone, leaving me standing in the kitchen with the taste of him still on my lips, and the terrifying realization that I'm already falling for him again, despite every promise I made to myself about keeping my distance. Chapter 4. The Sun as Secret and Sentence. Dante returns to the cottage 18 hours later, looking like he's been through hell and back, his shirt stained with what I desperately hope isn't blood, and his knuckles bruised and swollen from what I can only imagine was violence I don't want to think about too closely. He finds me on the couch where I've been alternating between pacing anxiously and sitting down when my back gets too sore. And the moment our eyes meet, I can see the weight of whatever he's done sitting heavy on his shoulders. Is it handled? I ask the question, even though I'm not entirely sure I want to know the answer. Not sure I'm ready to face the reality of what this man is capable of when someone threatens what he considers his. It's handled. Mateo won't be bothering anyone ever again. And I've made it very clear to everyone in the organization what happens when someone comes after my family. He moves toward me slowly, like he's afraid I might run if he approaches too quickly. And when he reaches the couch, he drops to his knees in front of me like he did on the street yesterday, his hands hovering near my belly, as if asking permission. Anon, tell me I didn't lose you by doing what needed to be done. Tell me you understand why I had to eliminate that threat. His vulnerability in this moment is almost harder to witness than his violence. This powerful man on his knees in front of me begging for understanding and acceptance, and I find my hands reaching for his face before I consciously decide to touch him. Well, I'm not going to pretend I'm comfortable with the violence that's part of your world. But I also can't pretend I'm not relieved that the immediate threat is gone. I guide his hands to my stomach, letting him feel the steady movements of our daughter beneath his palms. She's been extra active today, probably sensing my stress and anxiety about you being gone. His entire expression softens as he feels her kick against his hands, that look of absolute wonder that transforms his usually hard features into something almost gentle. I made some calls while I was handling the Mateo situation, pulled some strings to get us into the best maternal fetal medicine specialist in the state. He looks up at me with cautious hope in his eyes. There's an appointment tomorrow morning for a full anatomy scan and checkup if you're willing. I want to make sure both of you are healthy after everything you've been through. The fact that he thought about prenatal care while dealing with his cousin's betrayal does something strange to my heart, reminding me of the small ways he used to show he cared even when he couldn't say the words. I've been seeing a doctor in Colorado. She's been monitoring everything and says the pregnancy is progressing normally. I'm sure she's competent, but I need to see for myself. Need to hear from the best specialist that you're both truly okay. His hands spread wider across my belly in a gesture that's becoming familiar. Oh, please let me do this. Let me take care of you both the way I should have been doing all along. You're going to be impossible about this, aren't you? Insisting on the best of everything and hovering over every detail. Absolutely impossible, completely overbearing, and totally unapologetic about it. A small smile tugs at his lips despite the exhaustion clear in every line of his body. You might as well get used to it now because it's only going to get worse once she's actually here. I find myself smiling back despite everything, despite the violence he just committed and the complicated mess we're still navigating. Because this moment feels real in a way our marriage never quite managed to achieve. Fine. We'll go to your fancy specialist tomorrow, but I'm keeping my regular doctor in Colorado as well because I trust her. Deal. As long as you let me be involved in all of it from this point forward. He stands up and extends his hand to help me off the couch, and when I take it, he pulls me carefully to my feet before wrapping his arms around me in a hug that's more about seeking comfort than giving it. I was terrified the entire time I was gone that something would happen while I couldn't protect you. Kept imagining all the ways this could still go wrong. I let myself lean into his embrace for a moment, breathing in his familiar scent beneath the copper tang of violence, and allow myself to admit how scared I was too. So I kept thinking about what I would do if you didn't come back, how I would explain to our daughter one day that her father died protecting us before she ever got to meet him. I'm not going anywhere. I promise you that much at least. He pulls back just enough to look down at me with fierce intensity. I've survived too much and fought too hard to get you back to let something as simple as death take me away from you now. The next morning, we drive into the city for the appointment with Dr. Sarah Chen, who turns out to be exactly as prestigious and thorough as Dante promised. Her office is in one of those medical buildings that screams expensive private care. All marble floors and original artwork and staff who speak in hushed, respectful tones. Dante keeps his hand on my lower back as we're ushered into a spacious exam room, his presence both comforting and overwhelming in the clinical space. Dr. Chen is a petite woman in her 40s, with kind eyes and an efficient manner that puts me at ease almost immediately, despite my nervousness about this whole situation. Mr. Moretti has explained that you've been receiving care elsewhere, but he wanted a comprehensive evaluation, which I think is very prudent given how far along you are. She helps me onto the exam table and begins setting up the ultrasound equipment with practiced ease. Let's take a look at this baby and make sure everything is progressing as it should. Dante positions himself right beside me, his hand finding mine and gripping it perhaps a bit too tightly, and I can feel the tension radiating through him as the doctor applies the cold gel to my exposed belly. When the image appears on the screen, showing our daughter in profile with her tiny hand near her face, I hear Dante's breath catch in a way that makes my chest ache. Kai, there's your baby, measuring right on track for 28 weeks, with a strong heartbeat and good movement. Dr. Chen moves the wand around, showing us different angles while explaining what we're seeing. All the organs look well developed. The amniotic fluid levels are perfect, and the placenta is in an ideal position. And there are no complications, nothing wrong that we need to worry about. Dante's voice is rough with emotion, his eyes never leaving the screen where our daughter is visible in startling detail. Everything looks textbook perfect. You have a very healthy baby here. The doctor smiles at both of us before her expression turns slightly more serious. I do want to talk about your stress levels, though, because Mr. Moretti mentioned some concerning circumstances that brought you both here. I feel my face flush with embarrassment at whatever version of our story Dante gave her, but the doctor's expression remains professionally neutral as she continues. High stress during pregnancy can affect both mother and baby, so I'm going to recommend some strategies for management, and I want you back here in 2 weeks for another checkup. After taking what feels like hundreds of measurements and asking dozens of questions about my health and symptoms, Dr. Chen finally turns off the machine and helps me clean the gel off my stomach. I'm going to give you both some privacy to talk while I go write up my notes and recommendations. But I want you to know that despite whatever challenges you're facing, you're doing an excellent job taking care of this pregnancy. Once she leaves, the room falls into a charged silence as Dante continues staring at the now blank ultrasound screen, like he can still see our daughter's image there. When he finally speaks, his voice is barely above a whisper. And that's our baby, our actual daughter, real and perfect and growing inside you. Did you have doubts before? I ask it gently, understanding that seeing the ultrasound makes everything more concrete in a way that just feeling kicks through my stomach couldn't quite achieve. Not doubts exactly, but seeing her on that screen, seeing her face and her hands and watching her move around, it makes everything feel suddenly terrifyingly real. He turns to look at me with an expression I've never seen before, something raw and vulnerable and completely unguarded. I'm going to be someone's father, responsible for protecting and raising and shaping another human being. And I have no idea if I'm capable of being what she needs. You're already doing it, already protecting her by eliminating threats and making sure we have the best medical care, already showing up even though I tried to shut you out. I reach up to touch his face, feeling the slight stubble that's appeared since yesterday. You're not your father, Dante. You're not going to repeat his mistakes just because you share DNA. How can you be sure about that when I've already proven how good I am at destroying everything I touch? Because I've seen you with her already, seen the way your whole face changes when you feel her kick, seen how gentle you can be when you let yourself. I guide his hand back to my belly, where right on cue, our daughter delivers a strong kick against his palm. She already knows you, already responds to your voice and your touch, and that's not something you can fake or force. His other hand comes up to frame my face, his thumb tracing across my cheekbone with infinite care. And I want to be worthy of both of you, want to build something real and lasting instead of the broken mess we had before. Then we'll build it together, make different choices and better decisions, and figure out how to actually communicate instead of just avoiding difficult conversations. Starting with the fact that I want you to move back in with me properly. Not as my wife necessarily, since we're divorced, but as my partner and the mother of my child. He says it quickly, like he's afraid I'll shut him down before he can finish. I want us under the same roof where I can protect you both, where I can be involved in everything from midnight cravings to prenatal appointments to whatever else happens in the next 2 months. That's a lot to ask when we've only been in the same space for 3 days. I know it's fast and probably completely unreasonable, but I can't go back to not knowing where you are or if you're safe, can't handle being separated from her now that I know she exists. His forehead drops to rest against mine in that gesture that's becoming our thing. I'm not asking you to trust me completely or to pretend everything is fine between us. I'm just asking you to give me the chance to prove I can be the man you need me to be. The smart, logical part of my brain is screaming that this is too much too fast, that I'm setting myself up for heartbreak by letting him back into my life this completely. But the part of me that's been lonely and scared for 6 months is desperate to say yes. "2 months. You get until she's born to prove that this can work, that we can be partners and co-parents without destroying each other again." The relief that floods across his face is almost painful to witness. "2 months. I can work with that. But I need you to promise me something. Promise that you'll talk to me when things get difficult instead of just making decisions on your own about what's best for me. I promise to try, to make a genuine effort to include you in decisions and to communicate instead of just commanding." He smiles slightly. "Though I can't guarantee I'll be perfect at it since controlling everything is kind of my default setting. Trying is enough. That's all I'm asking for." Dr. Chen returns with a folder full of information and prescription for prenatal vitamins she wants me to take, along with strict instructions about rest and stress management. Dante listens attentively to everything she says, asking detailed questions about nutrition and exercise, and what symptoms would require immediate medical attention. And I watch him transform into the version of himself that made me fall in love with him in the first place, the one who cares deeply, even if he doesn't always know how to show it. As we're leaving the medical building, his hands secure on my lower back, and his body positioned protectively between me and the rest of the world, I realize that somewhere in the last 72 hours, we've crossed a line we can't uncross. We're not just my ex-husband and his pregnant ex-wife anymore. We're becoming something new. Something that doesn't have a name yet but feels significant and terrifying and possibly worth the risk. "Thank you for coming today, for letting me be part of this." He says it quietly as we reach his car. "Thank you for making me feel like I don't have to do this alone anymore." And for the first time since I left him 6 months ago, I let myself hope that maybe, just maybe, we can actually make this work. Chapter 5. The Fall. We've been living together in Dante's penthouse for 3 weeks now, settling into a routine that feels almost domestic, despite the armed guards stationed at every entrance, and the constant security checks that remind me this isn't a normal life we're building. He's been surprisingly good about his promise to communicate, consulting me on everything from furniture for the nursery to what we should have for dinner, and I've watched him transform from the cold, controlling man I divorced into someone who's actively trying to be a better version of himself. Tonight, we're having dinner at the dining table he insists we use every evening because he says eating together is important for building the family dynamic he wants us to have, and I'm listening to him talk about some business deal he's restructuring to be more legitimate when I feel it. A sharp, sudden pain that radiates across my lower abdomen and takes my breath away completely. Elena, what's wrong?" Dante's on his feet instantly, moving around the table to crouch beside my chair with his hands hovering uncertainly, like he's afraid touching me might make whatever's happening worse. "I don't know. It just cramped really badly all of a sudden. I try to breathe through the pain, but it's intensifying instead of fading, becoming something that feels wrong in a way I can't quite articulate, but know instinctively isn't normal. Another cramp hits. Stronger this time, and I feel wetness between my legs that sends immediate panic flooding through my entire system, because I know what this could mean, and it's far too early for any of this to be happening. Dante, something's really wrong. We need to get to the hospital right now. He doesn't waste time with questions, just scoops me up into his arms with careful strength and starts moving toward the elevator while barking orders into his phone about getting the car ready and calling Dr. Chen to meet us at the emergency room. His face is a mask of controlled terror, every muscle in his jaw clenched tight as he holds me against his chest, and I can feel his heart pounding almost as hard as my own. You're going to be fine. Both of you are going to be fine. I'm not losing either of you. He says it like a command to the universe, like he can force reality to bend to his will through sheer determination, and I want to believe him so badly it physically hurts. The drive to the hospital is a blur of pain and fear. With Dante holding my hand so tightly, I'm losing circulation while simultaneously coordinating with his security team and Dr. Chen through his phone. He's giving orders in that cold, efficient voice he uses when he's trying not to fall apart, arranging for the entire obstetrics floor to be cleared if necessary, pulling strings I didn't even know existed to make sure I get immediate attention from the best doctors available. When we arrive at the emergency entrance, there's already a team waiting with a wheelchair, and Dr. Chen standing there in scrubs like she materialized out of thin air. She takes one look at my face and immediately starts issuing orders to her staff, while Dante refuses to let go of my hand, following right alongside the wheelchair as they rush me through hallways that smell of antiseptic and fear. We need to get her into an exam room immediately and see what's happening with the baby. Dr. Chen's voice is calm and professional, but I can hear the underlying urgency that makes my panic spike even higher. Then, Mr. Moretti, you're going to need to wait outside while we examine her. Absolutely not. I'm not leaving her side. The steel in Dante's voice makes it clear this isn't negotiable, and I see Dr. Chen make a quick calculation before nodding and allowing him to follow us into the exam room. The next 20 minutes are a nightmare of medical instruments and concerned faces and questions I can barely focus on answering, while the cramping continues in waves that make me want to scream. Dante stays right beside me the entire time, one hand gripping mine while the other strokes my hair back from my face, and I can see him unraveling with each passing second that brings no answers or reassurance. Finally, Dr. Chen steps back from the ultrasound machine with an expression that's carefully neutral but not quite relieved. Oh, the baby's heartbeat is strong and she's still moving normally, which is very good news, but Elena's cervix is showing signs of early dilation, which suggests her body might be trying to go into premature labor. What does that mean? What do we need to do to stop it? Dante's voice has taken on a dangerous edge, the tone he uses when he's about to do violence to something, and I squeeze his hand as hard as I can to try to ground him. We're going to admit her immediately and start medications to stop the contractions, along with steroids to help develop the baby's lungs in case we can't prevent delivery. Dr. Chen looks directly at me with gentle firmness. You're going to be on strict bed rest from this point forward, which means no stress, no activity beyond walking to the bathroom, and constant monitoring to make sure things don't progress further. Whatever it takes, whatever resources you need, just tell me, and I'll make it happen. Dante's already pulling out his phone to make arrangements, that controlling instinct taking over now that he has something concrete he can do to help. They move me to a private room that Dante has somehow arranged to have cleared of all other patients, creating a secure bubble where his guards can control access, and he can maintain the illusion of safety. The medications they give me make me drowsy and disconnected, floating in a haze where I can hear Dante on the phone in the corner making call after call, his voice getting progressively colder and more lethal with each conversation. When I wake up several hours later, the cramping has subsided to a dull ache, and Dante is sitting in the chair beside my bed, looking like he's aged 10 years since this morning. His clothes are rumpled, and there's something dark and dangerous in his expression that makes me wonder what he's been doing while I was unconscious. What happened? Did you find out what caused this? He looks at me with eyes that are simultaneously exhausted and filled with barely restrained violence. It wasn't natural. Someone tampered with your prenatal vitamins, added something that would cause exactly these kinds of complications, without being immediately obvious. The revelation sends ice through my veins, despite the warm blankets covering me. But I got those vitamins from Dr. Chen. How could someone have accessed them? They were delivered to the penthouse yesterday by what we thought was a legitimate pharmacy service. But it turns out the delivery person was hired by someone with connections to Mateo's faction, people who think I've gone soft by prioritizing you over the organization. His hands are clenched into fists so tight I can see his knuckles turning white. They're sending a message that they can reach you even in my home, even under my protection, and they're willing to kill an innocent child to prove their point. What are you going to do? I already know the answer, but I need to hear him say it, need to understand exactly what kind of man I've tied myself to by letting him back into my life. I'm going to burn down everyone involved, starting with the pharmacy and working my way up the chain until I find whoever gave the order. He stands and moves to the window, looking out over the city like he's cataloging all the places he's going to destroy. And then I'm walking away from it all, from the organization and the family business and everything that makes you and our daughter a target. You can't just walk away from your entire life, from everything you've built. Watch me. He turns back to face me with absolute certainty in his expression. I thought I needed the power and the control to protect what was mine. But it's the power itself that's putting you in danger, so I'm choosing differently this time. He comes back to sit beside me, taking my hand with surprising gentleness, given the violence I know he's planning. I choose you, both of you, over everything else. And if that means starting over with nothing, then that's exactly what I'll do. They won't just let you walk away, you know that. They'll come after you for showing weakness. Then they'll discover I'm far more dangerous when I have nothing left to lose. His smile is cold and predatory. I've been playing by rules I created to maintain order and stability, but those rules don't apply anymore when someone tries to kill my family. Dr. Chen comes in to check on me, adjusting my IV and asking questions about my pain levels while Dante watches her like a hawk, clearly still processing the fact that even medical care can be compromised by his enemies. When she confirms that the contractions have stopped completely and the baby's vitals remain strong, I see some of the tension leave his shoulders, though the dangerous glint in his eyes doesn't fade. You're going to need to stay here for at least 48 hours while we monitor the situation, and then bed rest at home for the remainder of the pregnancy if everything remains stable. Dr. Chen looks between both of us seriously. I'm also recommending you work with a therapist to process the trauma of what's happened, because stress at this level isn't sustainable for any of you. After she leaves, Dante pulls his chair as close to my bed as physically possible and reaches through the rails to maintain contact with me. I'm sorry this is the life I brought you into. Sorry that loving me comes with this kind of danger and fear. You didn't bring me into anything I didn't choose for myself. And yes, your world is dangerous and complicated, but you're also trying to protect us in the only way you know how. I turn my hand in his to lace our fingers together properly. What scares me isn't the danger. It's the thought of you losing yourself completely to the violence and becoming someone our daughter wouldn't recognize as her father. Then keep me human. Remind me what I'm fighting for when I start to forget. He lifts my hand to his lips and presses a kiss to my knuckles. And because right now, all I can think about is making sure nobody ever gets close enough to hurt either of you again, even if it means doing things that turn me into the monster everyone already thinks I am. You're not a monster. You're a man who loves too intensely and protects too fiercely, and maybe that's exactly what we need right now. We sit in silence for a long time, his hand holding mine while machines beep steadily around us. And the future we're trying to build feels more fragile and precious than ever before. I don't know if he can actually walk away from his life like he's promising. Don't know if we can survive the fallout that's coming from his enemies. But I know that in this moment, he means every word he's saying. And maybe that has to be enough. I love you. I know I haven't said it nearly enough, but I need you to know that everything I'm doing, everything I'm about to do, it's all because I love you and our daughter more than anything else in this world. The confession makes my breath catch, because even during our marriage he struggled with those words. Always showing his feelings through actions rather than speaking them aloud, and hearing them now in this hospital room after everything we've been through feels significant in ways I can't quite process. I love you too, even though you're probably going to give me a heart attack with whatever you're planning to do next. Probably. But I promise I'll come back to you when it's done. Come back and build the life we should have had from the beginning. And despite every rational reason I have to doubt him, I find myself believing, hoping that maybe this time things can actually be different. Chapter 6. The redemption begins. They release me from the hospital after 3 days of monitoring, with strict instructions about bed rest and stress management that Dante takes as gospel truth, transforming the penthouse into something resembling a medical facility with nurses on call and equipment that can track every vital sign imaginable. He's taken a leave from all business operations, delegating everything to Marco while he focuses entirely on making sure I follow doctor's orders, and the intensity of his attention would be suffocating if it wasn't also somehow exactly what I need right now. It's been 2 weeks since the scare. 2 weeks of him sleeping in the chair beside our bed, because he refuses to leave me alone even for a moment. 2 weeks of watching him slowly come undone from the stress of almost losing us. Tonight, I wake up around midnight to find him sitting by the window, staring out at the city with his shoulders tense and his hands clenched. And I can tell from his posture that he's been sitting there for hours, letting his thoughts spiral into dark places. "Hey Dante, come to bed. You're going to hurt your back sleeping in that chair." He turns to look at me with eyes that are shadowed and exhausted, and I can see the weight of everything he's been carrying written across every line of his face. "I can't sleep. Every time I close my eyes, I see you in that hospital bed and think about how close I came to losing both of you because I wasn't careful enough. That wasn't your fault. You couldn't have known someone would tamper with medication that was supposed to be safe. And it's always my fault. Everything that happens to you is my fault because you're only in danger because of your connection to me." He stands and moves closer to the bed but doesn't get in. Just stands there looking lost in a way that breaks something inside me. "Maybe you'd be better off if I did walk away completely. If I made sure you were set up somewhere safe and never contacted you again except through lawyers for custody arrangements." The suggestion sends a spike of panic through me that I wasn't expecting, revealing just how much I've come to depend on his presence over these last few weeks. "Is that what you want? To disappear from our lives now that you've made sure we're physically safe?" "It's not about what I want. It's about what's best for you and Isabella." He runs his hands through his hair in frustration. "I don't know how to be what you need. Don't know how to protect you without also putting you in danger just by existing near you. Then stop trying to figure it out alone and come here." I pat the bed beside me in invitation. "Lie down with me and let yourself rest for once instead of torturing yourself with impossible scenarios." He hesitates for a long moment before finally giving in, climbing onto the bed beside me with careful movements like he's afraid of jostling me too much. I shift to face him, our bodies close but not quite touching in the dim light filtering through the curtains, and I can see the vulnerability in his expression that he usually works so hard to hide from everyone, including himself. "Mon, I'm sorry for being such a failure at this, at protecting you and making you feel safe and being the partner you deserve. You're not a failure, you're just human, which is something I think you forget most of the time." I reach out to trace the line of his jaw with gentle fingers. "You've been trying so hard to be perfect that you're making yourself miserable, and that's not what I need from you. Then what do you need? Tell me what I can do differently. I need you to forgive yourself for not being omniscient, for not predicting every possible threat before it happens. I move my hand to rest over his heart, feeling it beat strong and steady beneath my palm. I need you to trust that we're strong enough to handle whatever comes together instead of trying to carry everything alone. His hand comes up to cover mine, pressing it more firmly against his chest like he's trying to prove something to both of us. I'm terrified of letting you down again, of making another mistake that costs us everything we're trying to build. Then make mistakes with me instead of running away. Let me see you fail and struggle and be imperfect so I know you're real, and not just some idealized version of yourself you think I need. Something shifts in his expression then, some of the tension releasing from his shoulders as he processes what I'm saying, and when he speaks again, his voice is softer, more vulnerable than I've heard it in weeks. I don't deserve you. Don't deserve the way you keep giving me chances when I've done nothing but prove how badly I can mess things up. Maybe it's not about deserving. Maybe it's just about choosing each other even when it's hard and scary and uncertain. I move closer until there's barely any space between us, close enough to feel his warmth but still leaving him room to pull away if he needs to. I choose you, Dante. Not because you're perfect, but because you're trying. Because you showed up when I needed you even though I tried to push you away. He closes the remaining distance between us, wrapping his arms around me carefully to avoid putting pressure on my belly, and I feel him exhale like he's been holding his breath for days waiting for permission to touch me like this. I choose you too. Choose this terrifying, beautiful thing we're building together, even though I have no idea what I'm doing. Nobody knows what they're doing. We're all just making it up as we go, and hoping we don't break anything too important. His laugh is quiet and surprised. The first genuine laugh I've heard from him since the hospital, and I feel the vibration of it against my chest where we're pressed together. You always know how to put things in perspective, how to make the impossible seem manageable. It's a gift. I'm very talented at pretending I have my life together. We lie there in comfortable silence for a while, his hand making slow circles on my back while our daughter does acrobatics between us, and gradually I feel his breathing even out as exhaustion finally pulls him toward sleep. Just as I think he's drifted off, his voice comes again, barely above a whisper. Stay with me, not just tonight, but after she's born. Build a real life with me instead of just co-parenting from separate houses. Are you asking me to move in permanently, or are you asking for something more than that? I'm asking for everything, for a real partnership and a real family, and a chance to show you I can be the man you fell in love with before everything went wrong. His arms tighten slightly around me. I'm asking you to marry me again someday when you're ready, to give us a real chance without all the baggage and expectations from before. The proposal catches me off guard, even though part of me has been waiting for it, hoping for it despite all my efforts to guard my heart against getting hurt again. That's a big ask when we've only been back in each other's lives for a few weeks. I know, and I'm not asking for an answer right now, just asking you to think about it and consider the possibility. He presses a kiss to my forehead. Boyd, I want to do this right with you. Want to date you properly and court you and prove that I've learned from my mistakes before I ask you to legally tie yourself to me again. Dating sounds nice, very normal and almost healthy. I smile against his chest. Though I'm not sure how that works when we're already living together and having a baby. We'll figure it out as we go. Maybe start with me taking you to dinner once you're cleared for activities again. A real date where you pick me up and everything. How very traditional of you. I can be traditional when properly motivated. His hand slides down to rest on my belly, where Isabella is still moving around. Besides, I want to show you off. Want everyone to see how lucky I am that you gave me another chance. You're ridiculous. You know that, right? Ridiculously in love with you? Yes. We fall asleep like that, tangled together with our daughter between us, and for the first time since everything fell apart, I let myself believe that maybe we really can build something lasting from the broken pieces of what we used to have. Chapter 7. The Love in War. 6 weeks after the hospital scare, I'm finally cleared for limited activity, and Dante chooses that exact day to make a move that changes everything between us and his entire organization. He calls a meeting with all the family heads, something he never does without months of preparation, and when I ask him what he's planning, he just kisses my forehead and tells me to trust him, which of course makes me more nervous than if he'd explained everything in detail. I'm sitting in our bedroom when he leaves for the meeting, one hand on my very pregnant belly while trying not to imagine all the ways this could go wrong. And it's only when Marco calls me 2 hours later that I understand the magnitude of what Dante has just done. He's announced to the entire organization that he's stepping back from active leadership to focus on his family, that his daughter will be acknowledged as his heir, regardless of the traditional rules about legitimate versus illegitimate children, and that anyone who has a problem with either of those decisions is welcome to challenge him directly. The fallout is immediate and explosive, with half the organization supporting his decision, and the other half viewing it as unacceptable weakness that proves he's no longer fit to lead. Marco tells me there have already been 3 separate challenges issued, which in their world means 3 different men have essentially declared war on Dante's position and authority. And I feel panic rising in my chest as I realize he's deliberately started a conflict that could get him killed just to protect our future. When he comes home that evening, there's blood on his knuckles and a cut above his eyebrow that he's clearly trying to downplay, but I see the exhaustion and determination written across every line of his body as he comes directly to me like I'm the only thing anchoring him to sanity. And tell me you didn't do something stupidly noble that's going to get you murdered. I did exactly what needed to be done. Made it clear that you and Isabella are my priority, and anyone who wants to challenge that can face me directly instead of going after you. He sits beside me on the bed and lets me examine the cut on his face with gentle fingers. Two of the 3 challenges have already been resolved, and the third will be handled tomorrow. And then we'll be free to live however we want without constantly looking over our shoulders. You're talking about killing people, about ending lives just so we can have some peace. I'm talking about eliminating threats to my family, which is something I should have done months ago instead of trying to maintain balance with people who were never going to accept the choices I was making. His hand finds my belly where Isabella is pressing against my ribs in what's become her favorite position. She's going to be born into a world where she's safe and protected and acknowledged as exactly who she is. And if that costs me everything else, then it's a price I'm willing to pay. What if it costs you your life? What then? How am I supposed to raise our daughter alone knowing you died because you were too stubborn to find another way? Then you'll raise her to be strong and brave like her mother. Raise her knowing that her father loved her enough to fight for her future, even when it was dangerous. He pulls me closer, careful of my belly between us. But I'm not planning on dying. I'm planning on winning and building the life we both deserve. So stop thinking about worst-case scenarios and trust that I know what I'm doing. The next few weeks are tense and terrifying, with Dante leaving for meetings and confrontations that he won't give me details about. Coming home with new bruises and cuts that he dismisses as minor, while I watch him slowly win a war he started for our sake. I want to be angry with him for the risk he's taking, want to scream at him for being so cavalier with his own safety, but I also can't deny that I feel safer than I have in months, knowing he's actively removing every threat, instead of just trying to manage them. Chapter 8. The Final. Isabella decides to make her entrance into the world 3 weeks early, right in the middle of Dante's final meeting with the organization where he's supposed to be officially stepping down from leadership. My water breaks while I'm in the penthouse with 2 of his guards, and the next thing I know I'm being rushed to the hospital while someone is frantically trying to reach Dante to tell him his daughter has decided today is the day. He arrives at the hospital still wearing the suit he put on for the meeting, running into my delivery room with wild eyes and complete disregard for the doctors trying to tell him he needs to change into scrubs first. He makes it to my side just as another contraction hits, grabbing my hand and pressing his forehead to mine while I try to breathe through the pain, and I see actual tears in his eyes as he whispers that he's here, and he's not going anywhere, and we're going to meet our daughter together. Labor is intense and exhausting and nothing like I imagined it would be, but having Dante beside me through all of it, coaching me through contractions and telling me how strong I am, and looking at me like I'm performing miracles, makes everything bearable in ways I didn't expect. When Isabella finally arrives after 8 hours of labor, screaming her displeasure at being forced into the cold, bright world, Dante is the one who cuts the cord with shaking hands while crying openly in a way I've never seen him cry before. They place her on my chest, this tiny perfect person with dark hair and her father's nose and lungs that work remarkably well for someone who decided to show up early. And I watch Dante fall completely in love with her in the span of seconds. He touches her tiny hand with one finger, marveling at how small she is, how perfect and real, and finally here after months of waiting and fearing and hoping. And when she wraps her fingers around his, I see his expression transform into something I never thought I'd witness. She's perfect, absolutely perfect, and you're incredible. He kisses my forehead while keeping his finger connected to Isabella's grip. Thank you for her, for giving me this gift I never thought I deserved, for letting me be here to see her born. Thank you for fighting for us, for making it possible for her to come into a world where she's safe and wanted and celebrated. I touch his face with my free hand. And we did this together, created this beautiful life and brought her into the world as a team. The nurses eventually need to take Isabella for tests and measurements, and Dante follows them with the intensity of a man who's already planning how to protect her from everything the world might throw at her, refusing to let her out of his sight even for the few minutes it takes to weigh and clean her. When they bring her back wrapped in a hospital blanket and wearing a tiny hat, he takes her from the nurse with careful reverence, cradling her against his chest like she's made of spun glass. Hi, Isabella. I'm your dad, and I promise I'm going to spend every day of your life making sure you know how loved you are. His voice is rough with emotion as he talks to her. Yanem, your mom is the bravest person I've ever met, and you're going to grow up strong and fierce just like her, but right now you're going to let us spoil you and protect you and probably worry about you constantly. Watching him with our daughter, seeing this dangerous man who's built an empire on violence and control become completely undone by 7 pounds of newborn baby, breaks something open in my chest that I've been keeping locked away. This is the man I married, the one I fell in love with before the world got complicated, the one who's capable of infinite tenderness when he allows himself to be vulnerable. And I realize that somewhere in the chaos of the last few months, we've built something real and lasting from the ashes of what we used to have. Dante, come sit with us. I pat the bed beside me, and he carefully arranges himself next to me with Isabella still cradled in his arms, the 3 of us together for the first time as an actual family. I've been thinking about what you asked me, about building a real life together and maybe getting married again someday. His eyes come up to meet mine with hope and fear warring in their depths. And what conclusion did you come to? I think we should start with officially living together as partners, sharing a home and raising Isabella together without any legal complications. And then after we've proven we can actually do this successfully, we can talk about making it official again. I lean my head against his shoulder. But I want you to know that I'm in this completely. Choosing you and us and this family we're building. Choosing to trust that you've learned from the past and that we can make different choices going forward. I'll take whatever you're willing to give me. Spend every day proving that I'm worth the faith you're putting in me. He adjusts Isabella so he can kiss me properly. Soft and tender and full of promise. I love you both more than I ever thought I could love anything, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret giving me this second chance. We sit there in the hospital room with our daughter sleeping peacefully between us, and I let myself imagine the future we're going to build together. The life that includes normal things like family dinners and birthday parties, and teaching Isabella to walk, mixed with the extraordinary reality of who Dante is and the world he comes from. It won't be easy or simple or probably even entirely safe, but it will be ours, built on honesty and choice, and the kind of love that survives even when everything else falls apart. 3 months later, we're sitting in the nursery Dante designed with obsessive attention to detail, watching Isabella sleep in her crib while we have our first real date night at home since she was born. He's planned an elaborate dinner that's currently getting cold in the dining room because neither of us can stop watching our daughter breathe, marveling at how something so small and perfect came from 2 people who are so thoroughly imperfect. I never knew I could feel this much, this intensely, about another person. Dante's voice is quiet as he wraps his arm around my waist. Sir, she's completely changed everything about how I see the world and what I want from life. She's pretty amazing like that, forcing us to reevaluate our priorities and become better versions of ourselves. I lean back against him, comfortable in a way I never was during our first marriage. I think we're doing okay at this parenting thing, managing to keep her alive and relatively happy most of the time. We're doing better than okay. We're actually figuring out how to be partners and parents and maybe even happy. He turns me in his arms so we're facing each other. I have something for you. Something I've been waiting for the right moment to give you. He pulls a small box from his pocket and opens it to reveal a ring that's nothing like the ostentatious diamond he gave me the first time we got married. Instead, it's a simple band with small stones that catch the light, elegant and understated and completely perfect. I'm not asking you to marry me right now, but I'm asking you to wear this as a promise that someday, when you're ready, I'm going to ask you properly and hope you'll say yes. I take the ring and slip it onto my right hand, saving my left for when we're both ready for that final step. I love it, and I love you, and yes, someday I'll be ready to make this official again, but for now this is perfect. For now, this is everything. He kisses me deeply, the kind of kiss that promises more than words ever could, and when Isabella starts fussing in her crib, we break apart laughing and move to comfort her together, partners in every sense of the word. Six months after that, on the anniversary of the day he found me on Maple Street, Dante takes me to dinner at an actual restaurant for the first time since Isabella was born, and over dessert he gets down on one knee properly and asks me to marry him again with all the romance and sincerity I could have asked for. I say yes without hesitation, without fear, without any of the doubts that plagued our first marriage, because this time we're choosing each other with full knowledge of who we are and what we're capable of both separately and together. We get married 3 months later in a small ceremony with just close friends and family, with Isabella serving as the world's youngest and most adorable flower girl. And when Dante promises to love and honor me for the rest of our lives, I believe him completely because he's already proven it in every way that matters. We're not the same people who got divorced over a year ago. We're better, stronger, more honest versions of ourselves who've learned that love isn't about perfection, but about choosing each other even when it's hard. As we dance together at our reception with Isabella asleep in her grandmother's arms nearby, Dante pulls me close and whispers in my ear, "Thank you for seeing me on that street, for giving me the chance to prove I could change, for building this life with me even when every logical reason said you shouldn't. Thank you for never giving up, for fighting for us when I was too scared to fight for myself, for becoming the man I always knew you could be." I kiss him softly. We did this together, survived the impossible, and came out stronger on the other side. Together, that's how we'll do everything from now on. And as we sway to the music with our daughter sleeping peacefully nearby, and our future stretching out before us full of possibility and promise, I know that sometimes the greatest love stories are the ones that fall apart completely before they can be rebuilt into something real and lasting and absolutely worth fighting for.